scars, blurring the city into streaks of white and amber far below. From 40 stories above Seattle, the world looked distant, muted, unreal. The man standing in the center of the room did not move as thunder rolled somewhere beyond the water. He did not flinch. He rarely did. He had built this view the way other men built families, deliberately, patiently, brick by invisible brick. The office was silent except for the low hum of the city and the faint ticking of an expensive clock no one had ever heard him acknowledge. No photos lined the walls. No personal objects softened the space. Just steel, glass, dark wood, and the weight of power that clung to the air like smoke long after a fire had burned out. He was at the height of everything a man like him was supposed to want. His name was spoken carefully in certain neighborhoods, never loudly, never casually. Men lowered their voices when he entered a room. Allies watched his face for signs they rarely found. Enemies did not stay enemies for long. The organization he controlled stretched through ports, warehouses, shell companies, and quiet corridors of influence. It moved money, information, and fear with equal efficiency. Yet standing there, hands resting on the edge of his desk, he felt nothing. Wealth meant nothing anymore. The numbers changed, grew, multiplied, but they no longer stirred him. Loyalty meant nothing either. It was expected, enforced, bought when necessary. Violence had once carried weight, had once required calculation. Now it was just another tool, no different than a signature or a nod. He was not cruel. That was the lie people told themselves to make sense of him. Cruelty required emotion, satisfaction, anger, pleasure. He had none of those. What remained was control. Control was clean. Control was predictable. Control never left you exposed in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why something hurt when it shouldn't. Control never asked for more than you were willing to give. Attachments, he had learned early, were weaknesses disguised as virtues. They made men hesitate. They made them sloppy. They made them human, in a world that devoured human men whole. Love was worse. Love was leverage. Love was a loaded weapon someone else always got to hold. He had watched it destroy powerful men from the inside out. He had watched empires crumble not from betrayal or bullets, but from the quiet erosion of caring too much. He had promised himself he would never be one of them. Once, a long time ago, he had almost failed. Her name surfaced in his mind without invitation, as it sometimes did in moments of stillness. Not sharply, not painfully, just there, like a ghost that refused to haunt properly. She had not been afraid of him. That was the first mistake he had made with her. Fear he understood. Fear was manageable, but she had looked at him as if he were simply a man making choices, not a force of nature to be appeased or avoided. She challenged him without raising her voice, questioned him without flinching. When he spoke in absolutes, she asked why. When he dismissed something as irrelevant, she asked who paid the price for that irrelevance. No one had ever done that before. With her, his rules had bent in ways he didn't notice until it was too late. Conversations ran longer than planned. Silences became comfortable. For a brief, dangerous stretch of time, he had imagined a version of himself that existed beyond strategy and consequence. It had ended the only way it could have. Quietly, decisively, without looking back. Or so he had told himself. The city lights flickered as lightning cut through the clouds again, briefly illuminating his reflection in the glass. A tall, composed figure stared back. Sharp lines, unreadable eyes, a man built from discipline and distance. A man who had convinced himself he was finished with the past. His phone lay face down on the desk, silent, forgotten. He hadn't checked it in hours. Nothing unexpected ever reached him that way anymore. Everyone who needed him knew the rules. Everyone else stayed away. Still an unease stirred low in his chest, faint but unfamiliar. Not fear, not anxiety. Something else. As if somewhere, far below the armor he had forged over years of deliberate isolation, something had shifted. Something had begun to move. He dismissed the sensation the way he dismissed everything that did not serve him, turned back toward the desk, toward the city, toward the life he had built so carefully around emptiness. He did not know, yet, that the past was already reaching for him. And when it did, it would not come with violence or threats. It would come quietly, through a screen, through a single image. And it would shatter the illusion that he felt nothing at all. The night pressed in around him, heavier than usual. Rain thickened against the glass, and the city below blurred into moving shadows. He had been standing in the same place for a long time when his phone vibrated on the desk. The sound was small, unimportant, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. He did not move at first. No one reached him directly anymore. Messages came through intermediaries, through systems, through men who filtered risk before it reached his hands. This was different. He turned slowly and lifted the phone. The screen lit up his face in pale light. A name appeared. Her name. It had no right to exist in his present. It belonged to another life, one he had sealed shut and buried without ceremony. His thumb hovered. Control told him to ignore it. Habit told him to delete it unopened. But something else, something quiet and stubborn, forced his hand. The image loaded. For a single suspended moment, his mind refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. A hospital room. White walls. Harsh lighting. Her face pale and exhausted, yet unmistakably her. And her body. Round. Heavy with life. Or perhaps the image shifted, and it was not her body that changed everything. It was what she held. A newborn wrapped in white. Small. Fragile. Real. The air left his lungs without permission. His grip tightened around the phone. His pulse thundered in his ears, loud enough to drown out the rain. The child was asleep. Its tiny mouth relaxed. One hand curled into a fist. Her expression was not joy exactly. It was something deeper. Something earned. A smile that came from pain and survival and relief. Beneath the image, a short message. Too short. Too careless. Meant for someone else. Before his thoughts could form, before denial could take shape, the screen flickered. The image vanished. Message deleted. The empty space, where it had been, felt louder than any gunshot. He stared at the screen, as if it might betray him again. As if the image might return, if he waited long enough. It did not. His mind moved fast. Too fast. Timelines collided. Dates rearranged themselves with brutal precision. He counted backward without meaning to. Weeks, months, seasons. His jaw tightened. It was impossible. It had to be. And yet, something about the child clawed at him. Not logic. Not reason. Instinct. The shape of the nose. The tension in the brow, even in sleep. The way the small fist curled inward as if protecting something unseen. He told himself he was projecting. He told himself power had taught him paranoia. But his chest burned with a pressure he had not felt in years. Anger followed. Sharp and sudden. Why send it? Why now? Why him? Then fear arrived quietly behind it. A cold, precise fear that had nothing to do with enemies. Fear of truth. He set the phone down as if it were dangerous. As if it might detonate. As if it might demand something from him he could not give. The room felt smaller. The glass walls closer. The empire he commanded suddenly irrelevant. This was not a threat he could eliminate. Not a problem he could silence. This came from the past. From the only person who had ever walked away from him without begging. From the woman who had once told him that a life built without love was just another prison. He had laughed then. Now her image burned behind his eyes. He did not know it yet. But the man who had stood untouched moments earlier was already gone. Something had breached the walls. Something alive. Something waiting. And no amount of power would be enough to stop what came next. He told himself it was nothing. A mistake. A message sent to the wrong contact. People had children every day. Women went to hospitals every day. Nothing about that image had anything to do with him. He repeated this logic while pacing the length of the room. Again and again. Like a ritual meant to restore order. It did not work. The image returned the moment he stopped moving. When he closed his eyes, it was there. Her face. The hospital light. The child. He poured himself a drink and did not taste it. The burn meant nothing. He drank another. Still nothing. His mind began to betray him, pulling memories forward without permission. Nights. Arguments. Silences that lasted too long. The last weeks before she left. He remembered the way she had watched him then. As if measuring something. As if deciding whether he was capable of becoming someone else. He had assumed she was judging him. He had never considered she might have been protecting something. Sleep refused to come. When he lay down, the ceiling felt too close. Too quiet. He sat up again. Numbers appeared in his head. Dates. Months. Calculations he did not want to finish. He stopped himself halfway. Stood abruptly. Walked to the window. Below him, the city moved on. Cars. Lights. People living small, fragile lives that mattered to someone. He had once believed nothing in that world could reach him. That belief cracked now. Slowly. Dangerously. What unsettled him most was not jealousy. Not Ray. Not even the possibility of betrayal. It was recognition. The child had felt familiar. Not in appearance alone, but in presence. As if some part of him had already known. He hated that thought. He told himself it was ego. Men like him were conditioned to believe the world revolved around them. He forced a cold smile at his own arrogance. Yet his chest tightened again. Uninvited. Persistent. He reached for his phone, then stopped. If he searched. If he asked. If he confirmed anything. Control would be lost. So instead, he did what he had always done. He gathered information without touching it directly. By morning, men were quietly moving. Checking hospital admissions. Cross-referencing names. Nothing illegal. Nothing obvious. Just patterns. He watched from a distance. As he always did. But the waiting changed him. Every hour stretched. Every update felt too slow. The silence grew teeth. He found himself replaying their last conversation. Her voice steady. Her eyes tired. The way she had said she could not live half a life anymore. He had thought that was weakness. Now he wondered if it had been clarity. By the second night, he stopped pretending. This was no longer curiosity. This was obsession. The possibility pressed against him from every side. Not as a certainty, but as a question that refused to stay unanswered. If the child was his, everything changed. Not the empire. Not the money. Not the enemies. Him. He realized then that fear had returned to his life. Real fear. Quiet. Focused. Fear of becoming responsible for something he could not control. Fear of losing something he had not even been allowed to touch. Somewhere across the city, a woman slept beside a child. A life continued without him. And for the first time in years, the man who had built his power on distance could not stand being left outside the truth. Whatever waited at the end of this question, he would face it, because pretending no longer worked. And the past had already chosen him. The decision did not come like a storm. It arrived quietly, settled into his chest with the weight of certainty. By dawn, the city was pale and exhausted. Rain still clung to the streets. He stood alone, fastening his coat with slow, deliberate movements. No guards. No driver. No weapons. That alone should have told him how far he had already crossed. This was not business. This was not strategy. This was something older and more dangerous. The car moved through streets he had not driven himself in years. Neighborhoods where his name meant nothing. Corners where power did not bend. With every mile, memories surfaced uninvited. Her laugh in places like these. The way she walked too fast when she was angry. The way she believed streets told stories if you paid attention. He had dismissed that once. Now the streets felt heavy with unfinished sentences. He parked far from the hospital, a habit ingrained too deeply to abandon. As he walked, the cold bit through his coat. Each step felt wrong. Exposed. Inside the building, the smell hit him first. Clean and sharp and human. He hated it immediately. People moved around him without recognition. Nurses. Families. Men holding flowers too tightly. Women with tired eyes. No one feared him here. No one lowered their gaze. It unsettled him more than open hostility ever had. He stood near the wall, pretending to read nothing. Watching everything. Listening to the rhythm of a place where life and death shared hallways. Then he saw her. She walked slowly, one hand resting protectively at her side. Her face thinner, stronger, changed. She was not broken. That was the first thing he noticed. Whatever she had endured, it had not weakened her. It had sharpened her. His chest tightened again. That same pressure. That same unwelcome heat. She disappeared behind a set of doors, marked with symbols he did not need explained. Maternity. The word landed hard. Final. He stood there longer than he should have. Long enough for doubt to whisper. Long enough for fear to rise. This was the moment to turn back. To leave with questions unanswered. To preserve the illusion of distance. He did not move. When the doors opened again, he followed. Not close. Not obvious. The sounds changed immediately. Soft cries. Machines breathing for smaller bodies. Voices lowered by instinct. Through glass, he saw what the image had not fully captured. Her arms around something impossibly small. Her forehead pressed to a tiny head. Her body curved in instinctive protection. The child moved. A small restless shift. And something inside him broke alignment. Not shattered. Not dramatic. Just enough. She turned then. As if she felt him watching. As if some thread still connected them. Their eyes met. The world narrowed. Surprise flickered across her face. Then something darker. Fear. Not of him. Of what he represented. She spoke to a nurse. Placed the child down with reverence. Then stepped into the hallway. They stood facing each other, with nothing between them. No men. No power. No past agreements. Just the truth pressing closer. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Her voice steady but guarded. He searched for an answer that would not sound like weakness. Like need. "I saw the photo," he said. Silence expanded. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes dropped briefly, then lifted again. "That was not meant for you." He nodded slowly. "Yet here I am." Something passed between them then. Something unfinished. Something dangerous. And he understood too late. Coming here was not the risk. Leaving without answers would be. And whatever waited next, whatever truth stood behind that glass, it would change everything. Whether he was ready or not. The cafeteria was quiet in the way hospitals were quiet. Never silent. Just muted by exhaustion. They sat across from each other with a small table between them. 2 cups of coffee untouched. Steam rising and fading without purpose. She kept her hands wrapped around the cup. Not drinking. Just grounding herself. He studied her without hiding it. The changes were subtle but undeniable. Her face carried a steadiness he did not remember. Not softer. Stronger. You should not have come, she said finally. Her voice calm but guarded. He did not answer right away. Answers were dangerous here. Answers created expectations. I needed to see you, he said. Her eyes lifted then. Searching. Measuring. That was always your problem, she said. You needed things. But you never asked what it cost. The words landed without anger. That hurt more. He leaned back slightly. Maintaining distance. Control. You sent the foe. Her fingers tightened around the cup. For a moment she closed her eyes. I did not mean to, she said. It was meant for my mother. He nodded slowly, accepting the explanation without accepting its meaning. And then you deleted it. Yes. Why? Silence stretched between them. Thick. Loaded. Because once you saw it, there would be no pretending anymore. The truth settled in his chest like a weight. Unwelcome. Inevitable. He lowered his voice. People around them blurred into background noise. Is it mine? She did not flinch. Did not look away. That question does not belong here, she said. But she did not answer no. His pulse slowed. Not from relief. From certainty. You left without telling me, he said. His tone controlled but tight. I tried. He shook his head once. You vanished. She leaned forward then. Eyes sharp. You disappeared first. Weeks before I packed a single box. You were already gone. Her voice wavered for the first time. I called. You did not answer. He searched his memory. Board meetings. Flights. Deadlines. Excuses stacked neatly. Useless now. I thought you wanted to talk about us, he said. About fixing something that was already broken. Her laugh was quiet. Bitter. It was not about us. It was about what was coming. He felt something twist inside him. You decided alone. I decided to protect what mattered, she replied. You had already chosen your world. Her hand moved then. Instinctively. To her side. The gesture was small. Unconscious. And devastating. He followed it with his eyes. Then looked back at her face. What happened in that room, he asked softly. She inhaled. Slow. Measured. He was early. Very early. Machines everywhere. Alarms. Fear. The word fear echoed. He spent weeks fighting, she continued. So did I. The air felt thinner. You were never told, he said. No. The confirmation hit harder than accusation. He sat back. Hands clenched beneath the table. Why keep him from me? She met his gaze without mercy. Because your life is dangerous. Because your enemies do not miss chances. Because love is leverage in your world. And I would rather raise him alone than bury him. The truth stripped him bare. He had built an empire on fear. And now fear was being used against him. Just not by an enemy. Her voice softened then. You can walk away now. This does not have to touch you. He stood abruptly. Chair scraping softly. It already has. And for the first time since she had known him, his control looked like restraint. Not power. And she realized something had shifted. Whether it would save them or destroy them, neither of them yet knew. The room beyond the glass was filled with light that felt too bright for something so fragile. Machines whispered and hummed like restrained breath. The air carried a softness that did not belong to men like him. He stood still, hands at his sides, as if movement itself might disrupt what he was seeing. The child lay inside a clear crib. Small, wrapped tight, a living thing surrounded by quiet vigilance. He had seen death without blinking, had ordered men into situations with no return. had watched consequences unfold without regret. This was different. The baby moved. A slow stretch. A tiny fist lifting, then settling again. Something in his chest tightened. Not pain. Not fear. Recognition. He did not understand how. But his body knew before his mind allowed it. The nurse spoke to her softly. Adjusted something. Smiled. The smile unsettled him more than suspicion ever had. She stood beside him now. Not touching. Not looking at him. This is where he stayed, she said. The first weeks. He did not ask how many. He was afraid of the answer. The baby made a sound. Not a cry. Just a breathy, uncertain noise. His jaw clenched. He did not belong here. This place was built for hope. For patience. For the slow, stubborn belief that life was worth fighting for. Those were not things he had ever allowed himself. He leaned closer without realizing it. Eyes fixed on the tiny face. The shape of the brow. The mouth. The faint line between the eyebrows when the baby shifted. His reflection appeared faintly in the glass, broken by light and motion. The resemblance was not dramatic. It was worse than that. It was undeniable. His heart slowed, then raced. This was no longer about possibility. This was about truth approaching, whether he wanted it or not. He spoke without turning. Does he know? She hesitated. He knows my voice. My touch. Then she added quietly. He calms when certain people are near. The words cut deeper than accusation. The baby moved again. Stirred. His face tightened briefly. Without thinking, he lifted his hand toward the glass. Stopped himself inches away. He had never stopped himself before. The nurse glanced over. Then looked at her. You can come closer, she said. He is stable. The word landed with weight. Stable. As if stability was something earned. Something fragile. He stepped closer. Slowly. Every instinct screaming caution. Up close the child seemed impossibly small. A life that depended on others. That trusted without knowing why. He had never trusted anything like that. The baby opened his eyes. Gray. The same gray he saw every morning in the mirror. The world narrowed. Sound dulled. Time bent. The baby stared. Unafraid. Curious. Something inside him gave way. Not completely. Just enough. He felt it then. A sharp, unwanted ache behind his ribs. This was not leverage. This was not weakness. This was responsibility. And it terrified him. She watched him carefully, as if waiting for him to turn away. To retreat. To choose distance like he always had. He did not. He stayed. And in that moment, standing before a life he had helped create, the most dangerous man in the city understood something he had spent years denying. Power could not protect this. Violence could not control it. And whatever happened next, there would be no returning to the man who felt nothing. Because something had already claimed him. And it was small, breathing, and very much alive. The door closed behind them with a soft sound. Too final. Too intimate. The room was small. Neutral. A place designed for conversations people did not want overheard. She stood near the window. Arms folded. Breathing carefully. He remained by the door. As if distance could still protect him. For a long moment neither spoke. The silence stretched. Thick with everything that had not been said. You saw him, she said at last. Not a question. Yes. His voice sounded different to his own ears. Lower. Rougher. She nodded slowly. Then you already know. He took a step forward. Then stopped. Say it. The words came out controlled. But something underneath them trembled. She turned to face him. and for the first time since he had arrived. She did not shield her expression. He is yours. The sentence was simple, quiet, devastating. The world did not explode. Nothing dramatic happened. Instead, something inside him collapsed inward. Clean. Silent. His son. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. How? The word felt insufficient. You left, she said. You chose silence. I found out weeks later. He ran the timeline again. Slower this time. Each memory sharpening. I tried to reach you. I know. Her voice broke slightly. You never answered. The weight of it settled fully then. Not anger. Not blame. Absence. Why did you keep him from me? Her jaw tightened. Because your life is dangerous. Because your name opens doors that should stay closed. Because enemies look for weaknesses. And children are not allowed to be weak in your world. The truth hurt because it was precise. He swallowed. What happened to him? She looked away. The word hung between them. Heavy. What? He was born too early. His lungs were not ready. Machines breathed for him. His chest tightened painfully. For how long? Weeks. The room felt smaller. There were nights, she continued, when I did not know if he would wake up. When alarms went off and doctors ran. When I held his hand and begged. His vision blurred briefly. He blinked it away. You nearly lost him. Yes. The word cut deep. And I was nowhere. You were where you always were, she said quietly. Safe. Powerful. Untouchable. The accusation was not cruel. It was factual. He turned away. Pressed his palm against the wall. His world had taught him how to handle threats. How to respond to violence. How to survive betrayal. It had not taught him how to live with this. Why tell me now, he asked. Because you saw him. Because you cannot unsee him. Because he deserves the truth. He turned back. And what do you want from me? Her eyes met his steadily. Nothing. That was the most terrifying answer of all. I am not asking for money. Or protection. Or promises. She stepped closer. I am telling you because he exists. Because he is alive. And because you are his father, whether you want to be or not. The word father echoed. He had feared enemies. Feared loss of control. Feared weakness. But now fear wore a new shape. Fear of failing something that depended on him. Fear of choosing wrong again. She spoke once more. You can walk away. Or you can stay. But if you stay, you stay fully. He looked at her. Then past her. Toward a life that had already changed without his permission. And in that moment, the most dangerous truth settled into him. This was no longer about choice. It was about responsibility. And there would be no turning back. The hallway outside, the room felt longer than before. Every step carried weight. Not from threat, but from consequence. They walked side by side without touching. Close enough to feel the presence. Far enough to protect themselves. This is where things become complicated, she said quietly. He almost laughed. Almost. They were already past complicated. They stopped near a window, overlooking the street. Cars moved. People crossed. Life continued. You think money fixes this, he said. Not accusing. Observing. She looked at him then. Really looked. Money is the only language you have ever trusted. He did not deny it. I can give him security, he said. The best doctors. Safe places. People who protect. Her shoulders stiffened. That is not security. That is a fortress. He turned toward her. Fortresses keep danger out. They also keep life from getting in. The words landed with force. She continued. Lower. Steadier. I will not raise him inside fear. Inside secrets. Inside rooms where violence waits behind closed doors. He felt the familiar instinct rise. The urge to assert. To control. But it stalled. Something blocked it. What do you want then, he asked. She hesitated. That alone unsettled him. I want him to know his father. Not the man others fear, but the one who shows up. The phrase lingered. Shows up. He nodded slowly. And if I fail, then you walk away, she said. Once. Not twice. Not in pieces. He absorbed that. The finality of it. There will be no second chances. He exhaled. There is something you should know, he said. She waited. There are people watching me. Always. They will notice this. Notice him. Her jaw tightened. That is why I did not tell you. I know. He paused. But they will also notice if I chain. She frowned slightly. Change how? He looked out the window. Less noise. Less blood. Fewer shadows. She turned fully toward him. That kind of change has consequences. He met her gaze. I am aware. Silence settled between them. Then she spoke again. Someone else knows about him. The words struck hard. Who? Someone who offers safety without danger. A life without secrets. A father who does not come with enemies. The implication was clear. His chest tightened. Does he know the truth? She shook her head. He knows I have a child. He wants to be part of that life. He did not ask her name. He did not need it. He understood what this was. Choice. Not between men. Between worlds. I will not compete, he said finally. She studied him carefully. That surprises me. I am not fighting for ownership. I am fighting for presence. The word returned again. Presence. If you stay, she said, you will be tested. Not by me. By him. He nodded. I am used to tests. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she said, this is different. He knew she was right. Tests in his world involved loyalty and violence. Failure meant death. This test involved patience. Consistency. Time. Things he had never mastered. They reached the exit. The doors opened automatically. Cold air rushed in. I will not promise what I do not know I can keep, she said. He stepped closer. I will not offer what I cannot become. Their eyes held. The city waited. Somewhere inside the hospital, a child breathed steadily, unaware that the shape of his future was being carved not by power, but by restraint. And as he watched her walk away, the man who once ruled through fear realized something essential. This was the most dangerous negotiation of his life, because winning meant surrendering everything he had been, and losing meant walking away from everything that mattered. The change did not announce itself. There were no speeches, no declarations, no sudden redemption that others could point to. It began quietly, with absence, meetings he no longer attended, orders he no longer gave, violence he allowed to cool instead of ignite. His men noticed first. They always did. Routes were paused, retaliations delayed, old debts renegotiated instead of collected in blood. Questions followed, careful ones, spoken behind closed doors. He answered none of them. Control did not leave his hands. It shifted. He began restructuring the syndicate the way surgeons worked. Slow, precise, without emotion. He removed men who enjoyed cruelty, not because it was immoral, but because it was loud. Loud attracted attention. Attention endangered the child. He diverted resources into fronts that required patience. Shipping, storage, technology, things that moved quietly and legally enough to blur lines. The streets felt the difference. They always did. Violence did not disappear, but it thinned, like fog burned away by morning. He began showing up. Not dramatically, not announced. A chair in the corner, the pediatric waiting room. A silent presence during checkups. Hands folded. Phone turned off. He learned the sound of his son's breathing. Learned the way his body relaxed only when he was near. Sleepless nights followed. Not from threats. From listening. Listening to cries. To silence. To the unfamiliar rhythm of responsibility. He fed. He rocked. He stayed. And each time he stayed, something inside him realigned. Fear changed shape. It was no longer fear of betrayal or weakness. It was fear of absence. Fear of becoming a ghost in a life that had not chosen him. She watched everything. Said little. Trust did not arrive quickly. It arrived sideways. Through routines. Through consistency. Through the absence of excuses. He canceled meetings without explanation. Missed opportunities men would kill for. All for moments that could not be replaced. His empire adjusted. Resented. Adapted. Then the past reached for him. A name resurfaced. An old rival. A man who thrived on chaos. A message arrived. A warning disguised as courtesy. We should talk. The meaning was clear. This was the moment. The test he had known would come. The old him would have responded with force. With dominance. With blood. Instead he waited. Days passed. The threat lingered. She noticed his silence. The tension in his posture. You cannot outrun this forever, she said. I am not running, he replied. I am choosing. When the confrontation finally came, it was quiet. Controlled. No guns. No public displays. He offered terms that cost him territory. Money. Pride. But preserved distance. Distance from the child. From the life he was building. The rival laughed. Mocked his restraint. You are soft now. He did not correct him. Soft was survivable. Reckless was not. When it ended, nothing burned. Nothing exploded. And when he returned, hands empty, body intact, she looked at him with something close to disbelief. You chose to lose. He shook his head. I chose to stay. That night, as he held his son while sleep settled between them, he understood the truth fully. This was not redemption. This was discipline. Not a moment, but a lifetime of decisions. And for the first time since power had found him, he was not afraid of what it demanded. Because what it demanded now was presence, and he was finally ready to give it. Time softened the sharp edges. Not all at once, but enough to let light in. The child grew. Stronger. Steadier. Each day bringing new sounds, new expressions, new demands. The man who had once ruled through distance learned the rhythm of mornings. Learned the weight of small arms. Learned how silence could be shared instead of enforced. He no longer watched the city from above. He watched it through windows smudged with fingerprints. Through moments measured in breaths and heartbeats. She noticed the change before she trusted it. That was her nature. Trust came later. Quietly. Without ceremony. The test returned when they least expected it. A shadow from his past reappeared. Not with threats, but with opportunity. A deal that promised safety. Power. Finality. All it required was one night. One decision. One return to who he had been. He did not answer immediately. That hesitation mattered. The offer lingered like a bruise. Invisible but painful. She sensed it. Asked nothing. Waited. The night the choice arrived, he sat alone in the dark. The child asleep nearby. The room filled with soft breathing. He remembered who he had been. The certainty. The ease. The absence of doubt. And then he looked at the small shape in the crib. The rise and fall of a chest that trusted the world to hold it. He sent one message. Short. Final. No. The past receded. Not defeated, but denied. The danger did not vanish. It never would. But it no longer defined him. Months passed. Routine replaced tension. Laughter entered rooms that once echoed. The house filled with proof of life. Drawings. Toys. Unfinished conversations. One evening, as the sun faded into gold, she stood beside him, watching the child take uncertain steps across the floor. She reached for his hand without looking. He felt the meaning of it immediately. You stayed, she said. He nodded. Every day. She turned then. Eyes bright. Steady. I believe you. The words landed heavier than any vow. Later, when the house was quiet, she placed something in his hand. A ring. Simple. Unassuming. I am not asking for perfection, she said. I am asking for presence. His answer came without hesitation. Yes. They did not need witnesses. The moment was enough. Their life did not become safe. It became real. The man who had once felt nothing learned that love was not weakness. It was endurance. And as he lifted his child into his arms, feeling the solid weight of trust and warmth, he understood the truth that power had never taught him. The strongest thing he had ever done was not taking control. It was letting himself stay. And when the child reached for him, fingers wrapping around his hand, he did not